People, for today's Mod Podge hack video, I thought we could start off with a simple decoupaging paper piece. I'm just kidding, people. Today I have 4 Mod Podge hacks, new things for you to kind of do at Mod Podge instead of the typical day-to-day decoupage use. I know, I can't believe I said that myself. This R and this S are going to be our first victims. I'm just kidding. On a recent trip to Dollar Tree, I grabbed these foil flakes in all 3 colors because I have no self-control. But because I have no faith in them, I also ordered some gold foil off of Amazon. What are we doing, Brandy? What's the hack? Well, recently on TikTok, I know TikTok's got all the goodies, I seen somebody using Mod Podge to attach gold foil. And I was like, oh, we gonna try this. Truth be told, I have really never used gold foil, especially not like this. And I know that they have that adhesive glue, but I've seen enough furniture artists do enough beautiful projects with it. So I had some expectations, not extremely high though, because the TikTok video did share that you have to apply the foil as the Mod Podge is drying. It's like in a tacky stage. I don't know if you've ever like stared at Mod Podge like I do, but it has stages: really wet, kind of dry, then it's like kind of tacky, and then it's, you think it's dry, but there's still some wet spots. You know, it goes through stages. This stuff is super thin. I mean, like super thin. It was so easily like disintegrating in my hand. So I felt like this was at a good point that I could just start pressing and tappity tap 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 in it right on the outside of the letters. I purchased these for me because someday I'm gonna have a nice little background behind me, and this is the R and the S in the DIY struggle, and I wanted different lettering, so I thought gold would look really cool on the outside of one, and then we would have the 3 colors on the outside of the other. Just in case you guys are wondering, what is the R and the S about, Brandy? As you can see, this is easy enough, right? I didn't paint a whole section with the Mod Podge, just a little section. But I can tell you, if it dries, it is not tacky at all. And like right here, that side had already dried. It was not sticking. And then see how it's wet? It almost melts the gold foil. So it definitely matters that as you're applying this, that the Mod Podge is at that tacky stage. So small sections and then, you know, move on. I decided to take this out back on my patio to get the extra foil off, and I know I didn't have the proper brush that they recommend, so I just had a chippy brush, a really soft chippy brush laying around, and figured we're going to do this. And let me tell you something. This stuff is, woo, it is messy. Like, there are glittery bits all over my patio. I wasn't sure where to get started brushing the pieces off, and then I was like, it's snowing, and as I'm standing there trying to get the gold off, I'm so mesmerized by the flakes, and I felt like I was in a giant snow globe. Anyhow, the point is, make sure you are in an area that you either don't care that you get this stuff all over the place, or you're outside to make sure that it's not getting all over your house. One thing I do know from watching Katja, if you guys are not familiar with her, she's a furniture artist. When you use this foil and the glue, it is beautiful. It's flawless. This, however, I noticed was having cracks all in it, which honestly, I don't mind. I love that kind of stuff. This turned out perfect for me, to be honest with you. I will absolutely be doing this going forward, using the Mod Podge, using the flakes. There's going to be DIYs. I'm going to be popping this in, so my patio gets used to looking like a snow globe because I'm so here for it. So me being me and having to give y'all options, I'm like, we're going to also try this with these foil flakes from Dollar Tree. And I'm like, it has to be easier because they're bits. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're little bits. I can just pop them on the Mod Podge as it's drying. Right? Wrong. First of all, I can tell you the feeling of these is definitely different from the foil from Amazon. You know what it feels like? Bubblegum wrappers. Little rolled up bubblegum wrappers. Despite my best effort with this situation, it did not matter if it was tacky or not. These foils were struggling to stay in place. And when they were, Since I guess they're like bits of foils or flakes, the flakes were kind of thick in certain sections from where, they felt like balled up pieces some bubblegum wrappers. They were thicker, so I started just taking some of the Mod Podge and going over top a couple of them to see if that would hold them down. And honestly, after about 15 to 20 minutes of mucking with this, I was like, you know what? This hack with the Dollar Tree flakes is just not working. However, the Mod Podge hack to use with the gold flakes, it's absolutely stunning and gives a beautiful, beautiful vintage crackle look, and I love it. For this Mod Podge hack, I would recommend using wood with this. Now I have this live edge wood that I get from a vendor at the same market that I'm a vendor at, and I cut these suckers on down. We're gonna need some book pages, or you could use some dictionary pages, or regular paper, but nothing glossy or satin or sheen, people, okay? We're gonna use some water on a paintbrush to really trim down these pages to fit inside of our wood piece. And you can take this idea and remix it to whatever works for you. And you can get wood cut down at Home Depot or use a Dollar Tree wood piece. There's tons of wood pieces that you can take this idea and just do whatever type of DIY you want to do with it. But I personally say use wood because I just feel it's a little bit more forgiving whenever you're using a lot of like liquid on top of it than a glass or like a porcelain piece. When you're happy with the size you cut your paper down to, just decoupage them onto your piece and then pray this don't happen to you. What the hell is going on here? Oh my God, it's not coming out. I don't know why that grosses me out so much. It just reminds me of real boogers. I'm still over here gagging. Anyhow, you're going to want to just attach your paper down to your wood piece. And as you can see, I'm not necessarily carrying how much Mod Podge on here. I'm not doing it over wild, you know what I mean? Putting too much on, but paper is a whole different animal than napkin or tissue paper. And I'm even taking a little plastic tool here and squeegeeing it, pressing to the edge to squeeze out, well, if I can hold it in my hand, till I get the excess out at the edges. And then I just kind of grab the extra that puddles around the sides. This is just going to help keep your wrinkles down to a minimum. And usually paper is the easiest thing. If you're a beginner at decoupage, paper is going to be the go-to. You might have some little sections around the edges that are lifted and not completely sealed down. And that's fine, because our next part, our actual hack, is going to make sure that this paper is completely sealed down. I can't wait to share this piece with you, especially because I do decoupage art all the time. But this is just one that I love doing and using. You're going to need little bowls with a tiny bit of water in them for every color you plan on using. I'm using 3 for this, and to start out, we're going to do just like we would if we're going to make some stain art. We're going to water down our acrylic paint, and we only need a small amount. It took me a second here blending different colors because I was going for a certain blend here. I wanted to get really colorful with this piece. The reason you don't want to use any type of paper that is shiny or has a sheen is because it almost has a protective coating. So when you're going to do this hack and turn your paper different colors, it will prevent the Mod Podge and the paint and the water mixture from seeping in and actually creating the colored decoupage top layer. If you're one of the people that like to change the color of their papers and use coffees and teas, this is a really good way for you to skip all of that and just use a little bit of Mod Podge and add that to any color paint with a little bit of water, and you can change easily to anything you want. What is that? Why are you happening? Why is there Mod Podge boogers everywhere? I don't know what was wrong with this particular Mod Podge bottle, but anyhow, if you're going to ask me what ratio, people, I kind of wing it. And to be honest with you, I think I probably put about a tablespoon of Mod Podge in there because you want to make sure you have enough that when this starts to dry, it's going to seal over it. So when you're decoupaging a piece like this, and say you wanted to just add a little bit of brown with some tan and maybe some vanilla to create a vintage look, you can go right ahead and do that and just seal over the whole piece, and it's going to give you that effect. Now, obviously, you can get colorful like I am, and as long as you're making sure your brush is fairly dry when you're going about this, it's not going to rip your paper at all. Now, you might be wondering to yourself, Brandy, why don't we just paint the thing? Well, you want to add the water because it dilutes it so you can actually see through the paint better. And then you want to add the Mod Podge because as it dries, it's going to seal the paper. Instead of you just having soggy, wet paper and then having to really wait for that to dry before you try to seal over it with a plain Mod Podge, this is going to give you more freedom and more durability with the paper because it will start to wear down in time. Especially if it's wet, it's dry, and you're trying to put colors on it, it's going to get saturated. It's a different consistency. And you'll notice as you're working with this that the actual mixture is a little thick. So as you're applying it, it's drying as I'm going because it has that Mod Podge in there. Now, obviously, you don't want to just do this to a piece of paper on its own because then the paper is just going to be nice and hard. That kind of came out wrong. Anyhow, you want to make sure that you're actually doing this on top of a piece like we did this wood, so that way it changes the color and seals it onto the piece all at the same time. If you want to just change the color of the paper, then use your normal coffee and tea DIY hack. We're going to take this stencil here and we're going to just make sure that it is applied on top of here really well. Also make sure that this is dry. It does not take long to dry. That's another awesome thing about coloring your paper. It does not take long. And then I'm putting a raised stencil on here. You could just do a regular stencil if you want, but I'm super in love with this Tim Holtz paste right now. So I'm using it every little opportunity that I get. Plus, I do raised stencils a lot. And people, if you don't have a fancy schmancy spreading tool like I have here, just, use a spoon, a plastic spoon, anything. It doesn't really matter. Use a tongue depressor or a popsicle stick, whatever you guys call it. Just spread it on there with whatever you have laying around. It doesn't have to be fancy schmancy. And then when you're happy with it, just pull it on up. There are so many different ways you can use the top layer to seal your Mod Podge to color paper and create different DIYs. I absolutely love using multicolors and raised stencils over wood pieces to make ones like this. For this Mod Podge hack, grab yourself a bowl or something you like the shape of and feel you can mold onto it. And then give it a couple taps on the booty. I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm sorry. I just ruined a perfectly good entrance moment. Let's do that again. Next, you're going to want to bring in the parchment paper. Or do you? We're going to get there. I'm going to explain that in just a second. And I'll take any information you guys want to dish out with me with that as well. You're going to need some water. And we're using this hard coat by Mod Podge, okay? Normally, I do a lot of glass art, and you can use fabric and you can manipulate. One of my favorite ways is to use tacky glue. But I recently discovered this hard coat by Mod Podge. You can use Mod Podge as well, but it's not going to get as stiff as this stuff. And Mod Podge actually has Stiffy to help stiffen up. Sorry. I can hear my mom now as I'm walking to the craft section. Like, what do you need today? I gotta go buy some Stiffy, Mom. I'm sorry. I can make an inappropriate joke. I don't miss anything. But it really is a product. It stiffens your fabric. So what I was saying about the wax paper or parchment paper is that I struggled to get the tape to even stick to it. You know how like nothing's supposed to stick to this stuff? Not even the tape was sticking to it. So I just kind of flipped it over and prayed, I poured a healthy amount into about a 1/4 cup of water and then mixed this stuff on up to get a really nice consistency. If it's too thick, it's not going to really smoosh into your fabric. It's been my experience, or whatever you're trying to attach onto anything. I struggle with that when you leave your mediums really thick, so watering them down just a little bit allows some play and some absorption, especially when you're using a fabric. To start this off, and you can do this however you want, but I do recommend starting off on the bottom, creating like that base section on the very bottom, and then taking your pieces and attaching to the bottom. This way, when you're all done, you can take one more piece and attach it over the bottom, and it kind of smushes all the pieces together that you put around the piece you attached on the bottom. You'll see how I'm doing it here, and it just gives a good end result. In my opinion, it just kind of holds everything together a little bit better. And you can do this with all kinds of stuff. You can do this with just strips of fabric. You could do this with the little, Dollar Tree leaves. You can do this with florals. It's just going to take a little bit of patience, especially because you're creating a bowl. So you're going to want to also let this sit for a full 24 hours. So the form takes shape. And I will tell you, people, feel free if you want to put color in here. It will color the burlap as you're doing this, so it comes out a different color. Or if you want to wait until this is completely dry and then paint it, you can put some stencils on here and then just seal right on over it. So here is me taking another little square after I'm happy with the shape of my little bowl I've created here, and I'm just putting it over all the pieces that are connected right to the bottom of our bowl in the center here. And then I decided it needed something else. So I grabbed some of this. I never know what it is, but it really just kind of looks like mesh and coral all at the same time to me from Dollar Tree. I wanted to create just like a little, decorative piece on our bowl here. So I cut this thinner, dunked it on in our little mixture, and then wrapped it right on around the center of the bowl. And then I let this sucker dry at 24 hours. And I'm going to go live for you here real quick, people, because I want you to actually hear this as I'm doing it. This, like I said, it's 24 hours later. Watch this. Like, this sucker is hard, okay? Like, it is ridiculous how hard this thing is. You can beat it on the wall and it is just not falling apart. So you want to create something, that Mod Podge, that hardening Mod Podge is absolutely ridiculous. This bowl turned out super flipping cute. There are about 3 different Mod Podge hacks going on in this one project. I'm going to use this 14 by 14 t-shirt frame because this is the type of glass I wanted. I'm keeping this piece, but you use whatever you want to use and use any of these ideas. Now, one is going to be something that I'm pretty sure a lot of people have seen, where you can use Mod Podge to create a fake stain look on the glass. This piece of glass was really wiggly in here, and I decided to take some Gorilla Glue gel and glue the sucker to the frame so I didn't have to worry about it moving. And no, I'm not entrusting hot glue with that job, okay? It should go without saying that you need to clean your glass, all right? I'm just using some alcohol here on a towel and wiping this down, or a little paper towel, I should say, and wiping this down. Next, we're gonna bring in our stencil. Now you can use whatever kind of stencil you want. I've been holding on to this lion for quite some time. I knew I wanted to use that for this particular project, and I was waiting for my next Mod Podge hack video for it. Now I'm going to flip my frame over and tape this onto the bottom where I want the piece to come through on the opposite side of the glass. And some of you may have seen this, where people take puffy paint and they trace a stencil, or they paint a design using puffy paint, and then they'll mix some of Mod Podge with some acrylic paint, creating the fake stained glass look, which we're going to get to. But first, let's talk about this hack. You're going to need some squeeze bottles. This was technically the only one I had. I wanted to do several, but I didn't have enough time to wait for Amazon to deliver me more squeeze bottles. So we're going to use this one and get the point across. Take your Mod Podge and put it inside a squeeze bottle. Then grab you some acrylic paint, whatever color you want, and squeeze it in there until you're happy with the way that that color is blending in with your Mod Podge. And then grab you some mica powder and then put it inside of the bottle. Make sure it's in frame because I'm not in frame here. And then shake it on up. You're gonna have a nice mixture and your paint is gonna have an awesome looking color. And the fun thing about this, for whatever reason, I don't know why it works, is this will come out like puffy paint. See how it's going on here, just like this? It's gonna stay just like that. It's gonna not lose the 3D puffiness, maybe just a little bit as it dries, but not a whole lot. And the best part is this also doesn't really bleed and go anywhere from other than where you're squeezing it. I'm taking the back of a paintbrush here just to kind of pull this DIY puffy paint around his little mane. So this is kind of two hacks in one. One, for whatever reason, the mica powder and the Mod Podge and the paint, it creates an awesome texture that gives a raised level to this as it dries. And then two, your paint, if you look at the mica powder and as this dries, you see it, it's going to have this beautiful shimmery look to it. It just looks amazing. I took the mixture in the bottle and I just basically used for the entire main part, and then to create the other colors, since I didn't have any more squeeze bottles, and if I did I would have did the same thing, I just used Mod Podge and acrylic paint. And you'll be able to see in the reveal that just the Mod Podge and the acrylic paint alone do not create as much of a puffy layer as adding that mica powder. Like I said, for whatever reason, the mica powder just allows it like a textured 3D appearance. I mean, there's a noticeable difference that it's a little bit raised, but it's not as raised. I hope that makes sense. Plus, the color is really cool when you add the mica powder. Now, I know what some of you are probably thinking, Brandy, why not just use puffy paint? To be honest with you, I don't really like using puffy paint because it takes too long to dry and I'm impatient. This whole project that you're watching me make here, it took me 45 minutes. Not kidding, 45 minutes. Like, it dried pretty much as I went, even the thick sections. You could use a dotting tool for this part, but I wanted something a little bit thicker to make the ends kind of stand out, and just use the end of one of my crusty bit paintbrushes to trace on all the extra pieces that belong to our lion here. The best part about making pieces like this is as you're coming to an end, you can see it really start to come alive. And working with glass, you can really bend colors. So that's why it's so awesome creating fake stained art, because you can blend it in different ways, different shades, especially when you're hanging something on the wall or if you're putting it in the window, and it will give you different looks. So I just added a little bit of water to the colors that I already had on here. So this way it was extremely translucent and just shaded in different little sections. When it was all dry, I took some black paint and I took some white paint and added in a couple little highlights in different sections. You can really see the beautiful mica powder in that black paint mixture, as well as how puffy it is compared to just the Mod Podge and the acrylic paint. Love how this turned out. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me today. As always, I appreciate you so much. And until next time.